Hey everybody, welcome back to the Decoded podcast. I am your host, Alfie Whattam, and today we have a special episode with Carl Tishler. Carl has had a super interesting journey from being C-suite for fast growth tech companies to investing in renewable energy and so much more. This episode is a must-watch if you're a current or aspiring leader. So enjoy this conversation, and if you haven't already, make sure that you click follow now. All right, Carl, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
No, thanks for having me, Alfie.
Awesome. So you're the founder of HPNA, which helps people become the CEO of themselves. I love that tagline. What do you mean by that, and how exactly can people do this? How can they become more productive with their time and I guess work behavior?
Gotcha. So I think the basic thing is that you have people that are really high performing in their jobs, and we tend to be super low performing in taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that can manifest itself in lots of different ways, like not managing burnout well, negative self-talk, impaired resilience, and sort of like passive career management, all of which I suffered from. So I started this to kind of teach myself what I needed to learn.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that we found over time, and I started doing this in 2008, working with people and myself, was that one of the things that's really lacking in this area of our lives, which is not about the decisions that you make. You want to change this job or you want to do yoga. That's all up to you. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the lack of structure and sort of like an operating system for when it comes to these areas that we call self-management and care.
Okay.
So by comparison, if you're a software engineer and you want to move up to IC3 from IC2, you know what's involved, and there's lots of structure and support to do it. Same with martial arts or lots of other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
But when it comes here to taking care of ourselves, which is literally like looking after yourself, self-care, looking after things like resilience and looking after career, there's no structure.
It's the most important thing.
Yeah, it is the most important thing. And for whatever weird reason, it doesn't exist. Yeah. We spend a lot of time thinking about those things. We make a lot of decisions and stuff on it, but we don't spend time managing it. And so all of these great skills that we have at work, executive management, problem solving, etc., they go out the door and are just totally absent in our lives. And so as a result, the bar is quite low in that. So there's some pretty simple low-hanging things that can kind of really help people a lot. And the main essence of it, as it's kind of evolved over the years, is a very lightweight, weekly, basically a check-in with yourself, but done consistently.
Yeah. That's cool. HPNA, what does it stand for?
High-performing, non-arrogant. Or you can substitute the A for whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure people can figure it out.
Try not to get banned on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And you said low-hanging fruit there that people can do. What are some examples?
Well, I think to me, the lowest hanging fruit of all is to completely ban the word should.
Okay, I like that. I'm with that. Yeah.
So should is just a completely toxic word. Yeah. I'm not a linguist, but I think of should as being a contraction of shame and could. So would is fine or could is fine, but just over the years of working with people, and again, observing it myself, we use the word should. It's like a self-inflicted wound every time you use it. So if someone says, well, should have done better in that interview. Well, okay, if you deconstruct that, there's a part that says, that didn't go well, and I wanted to go well. Here's what I can learn. Here's where I can go. That's great. That's learning. But when you layer a should on top, it just has this layer of, it's like a double loss, right? Yeah. Because you're sort of shaming yourself, and you're not getting the benefit of constructive things. So that's the simplest thing that I say to people. It's just, I can pretty much guarantee you, not a financial guarantee, but I can pretty much guarantee you that if you're really mindful about it and reduce the number of times you say should this year for the next, that will move the needle just in and of itself.
Certainly. Should is like one of those really safe words where you can say it and it's not scary because it's not like, hey, I will do this or I won't do this. It's neutral. It's like the number 7. If you ask people, hey, I've got this concept for this business or this idea or this strategy, can we all vote on it out of 10?
Yeah.
99% of people will say 7 because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They want to say, hey, it's good, it's not good. What you should do is say, hey, vote for this out of 10, but no 7s allowed. And then people will vote 6 or 8. And then you can see how they really
pushes them to. That's such an interesting point. That's such an interesting point. And I agree with you. I think it is like deployed in that way. But I think its primary thing, it's when it's really used, when people look at it, it's a weapon of self-destruction.
Yeah.
Really. That's why I have such a big problem with it. And at Hazy and in the academy, literally we try to completely ban it, like stopping people mid-sentence. That kind of annoying thing.
Okay, yeah. Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah, I think I really do think it does work. Yeah. Is the thing. Yeah. Sorry, so you were asking about what HPNA stands for?
Yeah, I mean, like not necessarily even just the words, because we've deciphered that. What about in terms of the overall belief? Like why? Because you had a very interesting background from trading, I guess, renewable energy and doing investing in that world to helping build high performance teams. Like you've been doing the academy now for a couple of years. I guess why? Why did this happen?
Yeah, well, for me, it started actually in 2008.
Yeah.
This global financial crisis. Sure. And for me, I was in sort of a slow motion train wreck. Yeah. The private equity company I was working for was blowing up.
Yeah. And the whole world was in 2008.
Yeah. It was.
So you were solving your own problem? Is that where it came?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Myself and those around. And I've been fortunate to work in a lot of really good teams. Yeah. They might be dysfunctional bigger companies, or they might be working with other teams that were nasty with sharp elbows, but the teams I worked in were always good and were always good places. And so the way I thought it, looking at kind of my colleagues or peers in it is there's this combination of actually being growth minded. I know I don't want to throw around management words, but I mean, like actually a person wants to learn. Everyone says they want to learn because that's the right answer. Yeah. But people that really are interested, and they tend to be low ego, because I think those things got to go together. So those people, and also people who can and are willing to think bigger than themselves. Yeah. And that is literally what the HPNA. Those are the two components of it. So HP has nothing to do with your test scores or whatever. Yeah. It's like, do you actually want to grow? And the NA, in any way you configure it, is about that ability working to work together. And I guess I saw over time how teams that were largely comprised of HPNAs, who come from all different backgrounds, all different, it's definitely not a fraternity. It's definitely not one type of, you can have people that are very, very different, but if they're aligned on that, it's just so much more infinitely fun and to do it. And I kind of decided also after 2008 that in my own life and in my professional life, I just wanted to focus on people who sort of had those characteristics. Yeah. So the question was, if you're someone like that, you're empathetic, and you're swimming with sharks and sociopaths, and you just kind of realize we all need to up our games. Sure. To do that, and that's kind of where the academy came from, or an effort to try and specifically help those sorts of people help themselves. Okay. Which is really what it's about.
Cool. And you've coached, a great amount of people and trained them and helped develop them, personally and professionally. And I guess if you was to look back from an outsider perspective, looking at you and your coaching style and how you do this, what do you think makes a good coach? What makes a good leader? What allows somebody to unlock somebody else's potential? I've had so many managers across my career, some of them terrible, some of them wonderful. And if you can capture that magic in a bottle, that's like the holy grail, right? When it comes to scaling something. So what makes a good coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing I've found over the years is that coaching, it's sort of like a fingerprint. It's very, very, very unique. Yeah. You can get coaches that are trained in the same place to do the same thing, but their manner, their style, their approach varies massively. And that's why I always say to people when they're looking for like a life coach or whatever, to really shop around and spend the time getting to know people, because everything is a function of that relationship, right? It's usually not really about the substance of it. It's really like everything is kind of unlocked and enabled by that relationship that you have with a coach. I think the basic tenets of it, and I kind of like a lot of things I learned it doing the wrong way a lot, is not to be directive. That there's a tremendous tendency to be directive.
Tell them what to
Tell them what to do, which is just, I mean, any trained coach.
People fight it, don't they?
Yeah, and they ought to fight it, honestly, because that's not coaching. That's like, I mean, that's like
Directing.
being a Marine, drill sergeant.
Sure.
So I think it starts with transparency. I think it starts with an ongoing interest, verging almost sort of like on constructive fascination with the person themselves, what's alive for them, curiosity and understanding the whole person, not just as they show up, but what's there. I think good relationships are usually characterized by working together over an extended period of time. I think that's just a key element. You build up a narrative, your efficiency of communication improves. And again, you just get a chance to understand much more of the person. So I think it's that. I think something that often can lack is accountability.
Yes.
And again, accountability, if you're not very careful and you let it ramp up, can turn into directive. But being held accountable for things, for whatever you want, is there. But the bottom line always is in any coaching relationship is that the client drives.
Yes.
And they've got to have agency, and they've got to have it. The work that I do, I mean, there's a lot of coaching elements to it. The work that I do, like in the academy, I really function as like a non-exec director. That's the idea. If a person is the CEO themselves, well, I'm a non-exec.
Yes.
When I think about that configuration, it's about being curious, being interested, being constructive. And the CEO is the CEO. It's their calls to make. You're not there to replace them. You're not there to be training wheels. You're there to
advise.
Be of service.
Be of service.
Really. And as I said, I think the main thing is about helping people to help themselves.
Yes.
But these are all things you have to learn, or at least I had to learn, doing it the wrong way.
This is a quick message to tell you about Alpha. I'm so excited to announce that we have created this incredible new tool which works as your personal AI recruiter. If you are hiring software engineers in the UK, then you need to check this out. Just type in your hiring requirements and click search. It's really that simple. From here, Alpha will identify all the potential candidates on the market. It will then contact the most suitable options for you, and then you will receive the highest quality CVs who are already interested in working for your company. It's 10 times faster than a LinkedIn job advert, and it's 90% lower cost than a traditional recruitment agency. Get your free trial now at welovealpha.com or click the link in the description. I'm so glad you mentioned the accountability piece there, because I've worked with a couple of coaches in the past, and the number one thing that I've got from them is I've often found that when they're telling me stuff, I already know what they're telling me, but I haven't really implemented it. But when I've got somebody standing there and checking up on me and texting and catching up in a very friendly way, I almost feel guilty if I haven't delivered on what we've committed to. So, it's been a great tool for me to compress decades of their wisdom into days or even just hours of like knowledge. So when we catch up, I can learn, 10 years of what it took them to learn. I can learn that in 2 hours because they'll compress and distill the best principles down and specifically apply that to my current situation, rather than it being some generic advice that I get from a book. And reading is great. I love to read, but oftentimes reading can be the book's written for 1 million people, whereas a coach gives you advice for you and you alone.
Right. So I think maybe I'll get the coaching establishment chasing me for what I'm about to say. But I do think a basic principle of working with someone is never locking someone in commercially.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the most basic thing. It's always got to be an opt-in relationship. And if the client isn't comfortable, wants to go a different direction, like to me, anytime, no problem.
Sure.
The reason I mention that is because I think one thing you also learn on the coaching side is that you are not there to deliver an outcome. That's a consulting. I mean, if you're hired as a consultant, that's fine. Or if you're it's a commercial assignment, that's fine. But the reason I mention that is because there can be a lot of pressure to compress a bunch of knowledge or get it off across. But if we know that we're working together over a period of time, which you can opt out of totally, but if we know that notwithstanding that, you're together for a period of time, then to me it's much less about trying to dump a bunch of insights or whatever on you, and it's much more about an ongoing conversation. And something I've really learned in the academy, which I know it's an obvious point, but people's ability to really learn or take things in, I mean, there's an absorption rate that matters. It's not flow of content, it's absorption. And absorption, I think, is, especially when we're doing this, and especially when people are busy, has a lot to do with a person's emotional state and understanding that. And again, so you have times in class or in a coaching where person is just not, I mean, they're physically there and that's great, but it's not time. And so being able to work with people over time and letting things digest, I just think is like way more effective as a way to actually get people to do it. My experience, I really like mindfulness. I think it's great. I've taken a lot of mindfulness courses. I've really enjoyed them. I've really enjoyed the cohort learning, which is what we also do in the academy. But I get to the end and kind of be left on my own, and nothing would really operationalize, which I'm sure is with me. I'm not blaming the providers of that. But the experience of that over the years really informed what we do in the academy and in coaching, which is, again, it's about absorption, and ultimately it's about like operationalizing it. Giving someone an hour of a great inspiration, well, that's fine, but I would gladly trade that any time for a person being able to take even a small, simple thing and be able to actually operationalize it.
Take action, implement it.
Right.
Ideas are wonderful, but without action, they're just ideas at the end of the day, right?
Honestly, I think they're worse than that, because another thing just noticed over the years working with people is that, and I'd say especially these HPNAs, we have a lot of chatter and things banging around in our heads, conscious and subconscious, all the time. And there's and we have limited bandwidth. So there is just a big thing about trying to reduce that. And if you're doing something and it hasn't worked out and that's continuing to rattle around in your head, there's a real cost for that, which again, I think is why simpler things is an approach.
Cool. You mentioned employee burnout earlier, and you've posted on LinkedIn a few thoughts around this in the past. It's obviously an incredibly important topic, which people talk about surface level quite a lot, but they don't really go into detail on it much. It seems to be what's that term, greenwashing, where people kind of talk about it, but they don't actually really do anything about it. It's more of a marketing thing. What can employers and I guess employees do to avoid burning out? Because it's a real thing. It's an epidemic. It's out there. How do we allow people to work hard, enjoy what they do, but not completely crash at the end of it?
Yeah, I think the simple, kind of cheesy answer, forgive me for that, is it takes things on both sides of the equation to be there. I look at burnout as for like an HPNA type person, again, who can come from any background. They don't have to be any career, et cetera. It's the inevitable outcome of being an HPNA. It's like driving a car with no brakes. You're going to crash, and the faster you're driving, the faster you're going to crash with a greater consequence. And that's really how I felt coming out of college. I didn't have the maturity or any kind of tools to protect myself against that. That's literally why I moved out of New York to London, because I thought it would be milder. Which is a pretty extreme way of trying to mitigate.
Move to the other side of the world.
Mitigate burnout, But I mean, I think there are definitely tools. I think that's one of the fundamental things, whether it's like our program, CEO of Self, or lots of other good programs, is firstly just being aware. I mean, what's interesting is that people are like, well, this is this huge problem and we can't solve it. It is very hard. There's no problem. But we deal with the equivalent version of that problem at work a lot. I mean, if you're in a manufacturing plant and you've got one facility which is key, and if you run it too much, it's going to burn out. I mean, there's loads of ways to deal with that. We do it all the time, and that is kind of the equivalent of burnout, which I'm not minimizing. I burnt out very badly, but 3 times, really badly over the years. But ultimately what it is and what it starts with, just like if it was a factory or something, is monitoring, is awareness of it, is consistency of monitoring. That's why, like we do in the academy, everything is on a weekly cadence so that you have a constant opportunity, and you're prompted to do this, to actually check in and be aware of it. I think what we've done with Harry, our CEO at Hazy, is when we started it sort of 6 years ago together on the people side, is this pastoral offering, which is not a line manager. I mean, in our case, I was doing it myself to begin with, but with people, but it's a weekly check-in. And all you're doing is checking in regularly with people. And we had very, very little burnout, not because we did anything magically, but just because we stayed close to people. And you can begin to see, if you're consistently with people, the signs of burnout. You can see it, they'll finish a big product push or something, or a sprint, not have rest and go into the next one. I mean, you can just imagine the dial going from green to yellow to red. So I think there are tools, in short, I think there's tools for people to do it, for sure. I think there's lots of tools. But the bottom line is, I think it's incumbent on people. I don't want to sound preachy, but I do think it's incumbent on people to take some responsibility for just starting to look at that as an important thing. And I think there's definitely a responsibility on companies to be mindful and actually really stay close to people and be aware of these things, to catch them before they happen, because they will always be happening, as you say.
I really struggle with this, to be honest, because I haven't burnt out yet. But I feel like I probably will eventually one day, because I just work. From the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I just work. Last night until 2 a.m. It's just chaos. But it's what I like to do. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy building. And I feel like I haven't burnt out because I do love it. But eventually, everybody has got a limit. And I don't want to, obviously. But I don't know. The short answer might just be to take a holiday. But easier said than done.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things. Burnout comes in lots of different forms. There's the big one, kind of call it like a flame out, where you're just, I like, in my case, you fly to Maine and stare at the forest for 3 weeks, which, by the way, is great. I would love. I do that anyways on vacation, but you do that. That's a flame out where it's there. That's where you've gone way past the red. But I think a much bigger practical problem is low-level burnout, which people don't realize that they are burning out, and they're working at an impaired level. And the thing is, again, especially about people that love their job and people who are very concerned they're going to lose their job, those two categories in particular, you're super, super prone and predisposed to burnout. And it does seem counterintuitive to say, well, actually, I mean, like, you're on mission with your business. Actually, the sustainable thing to shoot for is to only work till 11, for instance, whatever the example may be. But my point is, it is always a bit about moderating it. And I think that doing the big things like vacations, et cetera, those matter, but they matter. What matters way more are a regular kind of moderation.
Sure.
I mean, going back to my mindfulness people, who are like, the way they would talk about that is they would say, if I would say to them, I need a huge dose of mindfulness, I'm going to go on a 3-week retreat, they would say, okay, fine, feel free to. But what really moves the needle is to bring mindfulness into your everyday activities. And I do think it's the same with battling burnout. There's an awareness, and there's people are very, very competent at taking care of themselves. That, like, I really believe that they have, first of all, they have this great capacity at work, And they can take that and improve what they do. And so if your task or if your responsibility or if you take it as your job to say, I'm going to really try and monitor this, and I'm going to try and at the edges sort of look at to take the edges off, or put differently, what I'm trying to solve for is sustainable performance. Like, to me, that is the objective, which is in a range where you're not burning out or going off the edge in other ways, working consistently. And I think if you get that into your head as the objective, the macro objective, you'll find you begin to just recruit these muscles and skills you have at work and begin to, doing that to help yourself a bit.
Yeah.
Put differently, if we're always just managing for the next immediate thing, we're always going to do a short-term subpar job. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned mindfulness a couple of times now, because it's like perhaps the one thing that does save me and keep me going. I just do 20 minutes of meditation every morning. I've done that every day for a couple of years now, and it's great. And I do a monthly breathwork longer session in a group, but I love it. It completely transformed my life when I started meditating. I'm going to Michael Acton Smith's house to play poker in a couple of days, who created Calm, the meditation app worth billions. And it's simple concepts like that can have such a profound impact on your life. But it's got to be done daily. It's got to be a consistent thing. You can't meditate once a month. It doesn't have the same impact as a ritual.
Right. So that's a fantastic example of operationalizing something and figuring out, based on what it is, what's the right cadence of application. And as you're saying, in this case, it's daily and it's transformative. I mean, that's an ideal example of it.
I find if I don't do it daily, it's so hard. It's so easy to skip 2 days and 3 days, and then you look at it's been 2 weeks and you haven't meditated, and it's
Right. Yeah. Can I go back to an earlier question? You raised? You were asking about things that move the needle.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing that, again, we just learned over time from experience is, our lives are complex and challenging, and there are huge parts of our lives where we can't control the controllables. Right? Things are nuanced, but they're out of our control. Yeah. And I think one thing that's very therapeutic, which your example is a great version of that, is to have small habit-based things where the bar is very, very, very low to get them. If I could just illustrate it for a second. Jan 2nd, I would always wake up and have some New Year's resolutions, big things I was going to do, etc. Let's say yoga, or I'm not picking on yoga, but anything. And I'd do that earnestly, and I would want to do it. Wouldn't maybe have thought a lot about it, but I'd just wake up and that's a thing. So I found over the years you can pretty much plot what happens, which is you do it, it's going well, you hit some bump in the road, some scheduling thing, falls off dramatically, you want to try and get it, so you bounces up a little, and then it fails. I'm not saying it in a negative way, I'm saying it just in an objective way. And the problem with that, which what you're doing is the opposite of this, but the problem with that is that it's a triple negative. It's a negative because you don't get the benefit of the yoga. It's a negative because you've failed. Failure is great, necessary, etc., but you want constructive failures. A failure like this just eats away at you. But the third thing, which is really important, is that every time you have something like that doesn't work out, it erodes a bit of your overall competence and confidence that you can get things done for yourself. Triple negative like that. And that comes when we try to start doing something, we haven't really thought about it, we're not monitoring it, and we're setting the bar for performance at a high level. And so what we teach people and train people to do is to set very low, what seems like low targets. So it might be, if you're going to do yoga, you make it intentional, you make an intentional decision to do it, and you set the bar for doing it. Try and do it once a week. You can always do more, but you never do less. Yeah. And what's interesting about that, like the success that you've had in it, is that small controllable successes that are directionally correct. Taking care of yourself, that's directionally correct. Reaching out once a month to a potential work colleague, that's directionally correct in your career. These small victories over time, they're pretty much a triple positive, and they're very therapeutic. And getting these wins, the swing value difference between getting the wins and having those triple losses is very big.
Yeah.
So doing things that are bite-sized, that you can monitor, that people can succeed in, honestly, I don't want to be over dramatic about it, but it's pretty transformational.
Oh, it can change your life. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when you start doing them, even if it's just weekly, that snowball, that momentum, it's so much easier to do 2 days a week if you're already doing 1 day a week.
Right.
You know, if you straight away go, hey, I'm not doing any yoga, I'd love to do yoga 5 days a week. It's not going to happen. Like realistically, I would bet against you. But if you can do it once and then twice, then it's just so much easier. It's just a snowball. Yeah, and it's exponential when it starts picking up and getting momentum. I think people say it takes about 21 days to build a habit subconsciously. So if you just do the same thing every single day for 21 days, by the time you get to the 22nd day, you're not thinking about it anymore. Your body just instinctually does it. And you know, we're talking a little bit further down the line there if we're doing it daily. But just to begin with, doing it weekly, it's so much easier then for it to become daily.
So one big thing, and I'm certainly not a habit expert. You got James Clear, you got people that are fantastic about it. Like I try to stay in my little narrow lane here. But to your point, we have a tool called the Habit Garden. And just the very simple idea is that our small constructive habits, I mean, they're assets. They're really valuable. And in the same way, if you were a gardener, and I'm definitely not a gardener, if you were, if you had your carrots over here and potatoes, like it's just inefficient. You put things into a garden so they get managed together. And so what we do is it's a visualization tool where you take your couple of habits. So you've got yours, your daily meditation, and you've got your monthly breath work and your others. And they're just on a page. And every week you're just checking in and looking at them as a whole and saying, how are things in my garden? How's this habit doing, et cetera. And to your point, when you start looking at that, I think there's tremendous value to having a daily habit. The way we do it is it's got to be something small that you can do anywhere in the world. And so, for instance, making your bed every day, classic one, right? But I totally agree with you with positive habits, and unfortunately it's the same the other way, but positive habits, there can be such a powerful vehicle for change and momentum and mental health, really. They're great. So I always love it when people are quoting James Clear or doing these great things with habits, because I think they're really good, as long as they're set at a level that's sustainable.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're not doing them and then beating yourself up all the time because of that.
The making your bed one is great. I think it was, I might get his name wrong, but William McRaven or something.
Right.
He did a great, I think it was University of Texas, did a great speech.
Commencement speech.
Yeah, I read the book.
Longhorns, yeah.
It's a small book, so I probably read it like 5 times. And it's so simple, but so profound that making your bed in the morning, because it's the first thing you do when you wake up, if you can just get that right, you'll get the next thing right, and then you'll get the next thing right. But if you wake up and you snooze your alarm and you go back to sleep, and then you're late, and then you got to run and grab a coffee, and then your bed's a mess, and then you're late for work, then the entire day is terrible. And then you look back, what happened? I tell you what happened. Make your bed. If you do that, then everything else it kind of builds momentum and speed from there.
It's a great book, and that's what's great. I mean, again, for all of these things, there's such great resources. Someone I really learned a lot from about habits, kind of a little unexpected for me, but is Bas Rutten.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
Bas Rutten is a Hall of Fame MMA fighter.
Okay,
cool. I don't really follow MMA. I think I like sports. I follow it. I know, just objectively. Yeah. I reached out to him, actually. We had a health challenge with my son, which I knew from earlier sports psychology work that he had as well. I reached out to him. He's an amazing guy. I got the chance to get to meet him. And he's super articulate on habits and his own way that he's applied it. I just really recommend him as someone to listen to.
Athletes often are the best at understanding this stuff, because it's less about like a business strategy or an investing principle. It's literally themselves. It's their body. You know, the more that they can do for themselves to get that stronger and better and smarter and healthier, the better they will perform on the field or in the cage in his case or whatever.
Yeah, it's true, and he's super inspiring, and his whole habit thing is much broader. It's about about faith. It's about life. It's about family. It's much broader than that. But yeah, I mean that's certainly where he got it from, and it's really compelling, to hear people talk about these things and their own takes on it and their success with it.
Yeah,
very cool.
I've interviewed a lot of people, Carl, that kind of do the big corporate thing for a long time, and I did big corporate for 5 years, and then they struggle to work in a startup and scale that. You've managed to do that with Hazy. That's so I know Harry, the CEO. He's been on the pod a few times. That's not how we got connected. We were in a members group, weren't we?
Right.
Yeah, but we just happened to know Harry. But you've managed to go from working in senior positions for huge corporates, doing renewable energy investments and a very complex field, to now running the people and the talent for a fast-growing data analytics AI type business, which is startup scale up, growing quickly. A lot of people go wrong, don't they, from corporate to that startup world, and they really struggle to kind of find their feet in that respect.
Yeah.
How did you manage to make it work? And I guess for people that are going on that transition now that might be listening or watching, is there anything specific that they could apply?
Yeah, maybe starting in reverse order.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to career management, understandably, we think of things often as being only done in big stages. I'm going to make a big jump from here to there, etc. And you can do that, but it's not necessary to do that. And I mean, one of the things also that we teach in the academy is that if you're in a big company and you want to go to a small, yes, you can just make the jump. But I mean, if you were to think about that from as if you were a business, most businesses wouldn't just jump. They would spend some time doing diligence, investigating, gathering, and then they would do it. And that step in between, which we often skip in our own lives, is a critical one. And so if you want to really understand what it's like in a small company, again, take small steps to network with people, to sit and talk to people, to try and really understand it. So there's a lot you can do, I believe, and you can gauge things much better. I've come over the years to love cats.
Okay.
And one of the many things I love about cats is they're so thoughtful before they jump. Right? They never just jump randomly.
Sure.
They're surveying it, looking at it from angles, gauging it, and then doing it. I just think, be a bit of a cat.
The opposite of my dog, then, basically, who just leaps before he thinks, basically.
I grew up with dogs. I always will love dogs. But cats, very interesting in that. So I think, so there's a lot you can do to begin with. To your question, when we interview people at Hazy on it, you do get people that come from different backgrounds, from big wanting to go to small. And that's kind of the point. We would spend a lot of time talking about what it actually is like to be in a smaller company and to try and calibrate so that for both sides of the equation, you're making a better move. In my own case, I think I've always been a small company person by nature. In the same way, I think I've always been interested really only in people and place. And I got out of college and thought, well, you're not going to make a living doing that. Go get a proper job.
Sure.
And that's what took me to finance and all of that. But again, I would say that in the groups that I was in, 4 of them, each for about 5 years, it was almost like a small company, almost the size of a Hazy. And that was de facto what the team was. That was the little boat you were all in together. And I mean, I just love doing it, things at that size, and trying to get things done and navigating difficult things, etc. So I think that for me, although it was always in a big company, operatively it was small. So I think going to Hazy, which was even smaller than that, in an area I didn't know anything about, and I still don't, about our technology, I felt comfortable. And I think in life, so much hinges on the people you work with.
Sure.
So much. And at different stages in your career, you have different levels of ability to sort of choose or navigate. You're coming out of school, you're going to take the job that you are given. But if you can navigate around, well, for me, again, it comes back to just HPNAs. It's just very simple. I only want to work with, broadly speaking, with HPNAs. And when you can do that in a configuration, a small one, like with Harry at Hazy or others, I mean, that's what makes all the difference. And that's the thing that I was always really drawn towards, right? A small-ish group of people trying to really do something challenging and enjoying it together.
It's so much fun, like more fun working with HPNAs or just like A players in general, and preferably A players that don't have a huge ego complex, which is why HPNA might be even a better way of describing that ideal term.
Right.
You just like, it's so much more fun and rewarding and exciting, and
It is.
when people challenge you with intellectual ways of doing things and they push back on your ideas, rather than just having a bunch of yes men and women around you, it's so much more fun, right?
Yeah.
You've said a few times that you're not a technologist, and I guess technically not. I can't code, right? But I have an AI company, and as somebody that has helped build a data AI type business for the past 6 years now or something. What excites you about the future of tech? Is there anything specific which you've seen that whether that's AI, whether that's Web3, or whether that's something else that you think is going to have a huge impact on the future? Like for the people that have listened to this and might have gotten great value out of how to develop their career and how to avoid burnout and how to stay productive and sane despite everything that's going on. But from a directional perspective, what area should they actually be working in? Like, what would be a good career choice for a young person? What do you think is going to really change the world?
I think, I tell my kids this also, and I mean it, as long as you can make a living doing it, I think the thing to remember is that for the first 10 years, it doesn't matter. One of the big things when we come out, it's improved a lot in the last X years since there, but it used to be, you fell into a career, we call it the curse of competence, which is you have someone who is competent, who can communicate, wants to get ahead, and the challenge and the curse is that they may very well succeed. And success is fine, but success where you're not actively steering your own ship and you feel that you're getting 6, 7, 8 years out, and you're like, well, I am a digital marketing person. Well, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're an HPNA or you're a person, that's what you've been deployed doing. But this idea that it's definitional and this idea that you can only think and move in short-term things, that's a really poisonous assumption, and it's totally widespread. Again, I definitely suffered from that, myself. So my point is that I think in particular the first 10 years, they're ripe for experimenting and trying different things. One of the reasons, again, we were talking before about a low bar, is just keep a very simple journal of your career. Like really simple. You can't spend more than 5 minutes on it every 2 weeks or 10 minutes every month. But when you think of your career as an ever-unfolding narrative, right? Not something that's narrowing and just getting there, et cetera, but an ever-unfolding narrative. To me, that's kind of what management is about. It's about looking at things in a thoughtful way and thinking about, okay, well, where could I pick up these skills or those skills? And I think that's like such an incredible thing. So kill your expectations. I'll give you a great example of this. There's a really fantastic woman named Tracy Sponenberg, who's the ex-chief people person in the States. She's now fractional, and she wanted to be in HR from when she was a teenager. And that's what she did, and she was extremely successful, et cetera. But her advice to people, which is basically the same, is, a similar bent, is that if you want to end up doing HR, for instance, or doing the people work at the end, whatever you do, don't start by working in HR. Okay. Go work in industry, work in the other fields, whatever it is, and then you'll take that experience and bring it to bear on the people side ultimately, and your effectiveness and interest will be so much broader. And it's a similar kind of a theme, of experimenting and not being afraid of that, and not constantly resisting the natural urge to say, okay, this is my job, this is where it's heading, this is when I'm going to get the house in Fulham and whatever, which we do, but trying to rein that back in and giving yourself the space. I think one area, to answer your first part of the question, that I think is very interesting is just the interplay between human tools, AI, for humans. Mm-hmm. So an area I think that's very interesting is that things like difficult conversations or things like difficult interviews, we don't really get a chance to practice. Mm-hmm. And there are really good AI tools. I don't want to make too much of a pitch, but there's one called MindBloom, for instance, that's out there. That I think the prospect of having those tools and tying them together and being wrapped around with human instruction, et cetera, I think is really interesting. Yeah. Like really, really interesting.
So less AI to replace people, but more AI to be a co-pilot, to
exactly.
help 10x their ability.
Yeah, exactly. Or honestly, even if it's a 1.2x, it's
valuable. It's something.
It's valuable. Yeah. And so things that can be harnessed and integrated and deployed in a thoughtful way, I think that's like super interesting.
Cool. I definitely think that's the future also. So glad we share that opinion. Cool. Yeah. All right, Carl, that's been a great masterclass on all of the points above. For people that have enjoyed this, if they want to learn more about you or HPNA, if there's just like one place that they should go to, would it be your LinkedIn or website, or what should I put below you on the screen right now?
LinkedIn or hpna.pro, the website.
Cool, we'll put them both up there then.
Yeah.
Cool, amazing. All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode. I really, really appreciate it. I hope it brought you some value. And if you haven't already, please remember to click subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this podcast now.